Occult Confessions is brought to you commercial-free through the generous support of our patrons. Visit occultconfessions.com and click on Donate to help keep the history of the occult on the digital airwaves. Here we are for our last, final installment of Krishnamurti's life before we get into the philosophy. So we're not quite done with Krishnamurti. I want to introduce myself again. My name is Dr. Rob C. Thompson. I am the Supreme Hierophant of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors. Joining me today, as in the last two episodes, is the Supreme Hierophant of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors, John Cook.
Hello.
And the Supreme Hierophant of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors, Savannah Barrett.
Yes, thank you. As bestowed upon us by John in a dream, right?
You guys did some astral travel.
Yeah.
You all were there.
Yes,
to the secret Tibetan lodge of alchemical actors, where apparently your titles were changed. I don't remember, but John tells me that it happened, that I was there, and that I approved of it.
I was there too.
So if you have no idea what's going on, you probably shouldn't be listening to part 3.
Go back to the beginning, please.
If you get with part 1, at least get through part 2. Although today we are going to be taking a different track. Today's research is mostly on Krishnamurti's life in India. We're going to conclude his story with the Theosophical Society's. I don't want to give anything away yet, but certainly the story takes a big old turn into a new direction.
A different turn?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the biggest turn that we sort of been
I
waiting
felt
for
like
since
the last
beginning.
thing that happened right at the end was like the biggest turn.
This is in many ways the response, maybe. This is the action and reaction. And I wanted to wrap up. I started the last episode, and I want to do it again, talking about this idea of Krishnamurti's philosophically, that we can't perfect ourselves, or that we shouldn't be working on ourselves. I did something this morning. So we were recording the day after the U.S. presidential election was decided, or seems to have been decided. I think it has been decided.
It seems like it. I haven't looked at my phone all day, so.
Right, yeah, the phone. That's what I want to talk about. So I routinely, on the weekend, hear from my phone that I spend 2 hours on my phone a day. Now, this feels like too much to me. I spend, I think, an hour on my work email, and I spend an hour on a newspaper website that I follow, a national newspaper. So this morning I deleted that app. And part of the reason I did that was because, the entire reason I did that, and this episode I think is going to speak to this, is that if nothing else, what I learned at 5 o'clock this morning when I checked that newspaper for the final time on my phone, following politics is kind of a waste of time. Mm-hmm. So Krishnamurti is about to agree with us on this subject. But getting back to this improving yourself, like I didn't say, oh, well, I'll spend 10 minutes less a week. I didn't say, oh, I'll only do it here or there. I said, I'm done. We don't, and this is, my wife and I have been having this conversation because she's also like on this self-improvement kick, and I am trying to like hit her with some Krishnamurti philosophy. You don't try to get better tomorrow. You don't try to make yourself better in a 10-step process, because that situates you on a timeline. If you want to be different, you change. And that's it, here and now. Or you don't. Does that also, is that starting to click?
Yep.
Yeah. You delete the app. You don't plan to do it or do a little bit less. You just get rid of it.
Cold turkey.
And I'm not a saint here. I'm not going to not check the news anymore, but I'm going to do it on a laptop computer. You know what I mean? Like, I have now created a situation where my relationship with the news is going to be far healthier. Mm-hmm. It's a big change, but you make the big change and you move on. And Krishnamurti, to a certain extent, while he is not going to be a big fan of politics, is nevertheless involved in politics because we can't avoid them.
Yeah, especially as a relatively political figure.
Right.
A religious political figure.
Yeah, not intentionally, but as it turns out.
Isn't his like relatively adopted mom Basant?
Basant is incredibly political.
Yeah, so like he almost has no choice.
We, the members of
the secret order of alchemical actors, do solemnly commit ourselves to a full and honest telling of the history of the occult as far as we know it.
So on our last episode, Jiddu Krishnamurti was elected, speaking of elections, by the leaders of the Theosophical Society, Annie Besant and Charles Ledbetter, to become the vessel for the Lord Maitreya and the world teacher. I guess elected is not so much the word as selected.
Yeah, there wasn't any other people. They were just kind of like, it's this guy.
He wasn't campaigning.
This child.
Yeah, he was just hanging out on the beach looking at clouds.
Sitting under a tree.
Being told he wasn't very smart.
Right, yeah. After a long and period of painful episodes, he attained a mystical revelation of truth that resulted in his abandoning the role that had been assigned to him. Today, the Theosophical Society is going to attempt to discredit him, and he's going to cast them off once and for all. He's going to befriend the novelist Aldous Huxley and become a spiritual advisor to some of India's most powerful politicians, despite his deep aversion to politics. So here we go. You ready?
I am.
Very.
I like talking about this guy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Balm for the soul. It's good for everybody, right? We try not to be a political podcast. This is a day where we could be ranting and raving, but we're going to talk about Krishnamurti. It's better for us.
Make the change.
Let's make that change.
Listen to Occult Confessions, not the news.
At the Theosophical Convention, Krishnamurti seemed to undergo a divine metamorphosis while speaking in front of his audience of 3,000.
Wait, when was this?
This is at a big Theosophical convention he's attending.
Is this after?
After Omen, yeah.
Okay.
His voice changed and his pronouns shifted from speaking of the world teacher in the third person as he to speaking in the first person as I. Listen to what he said. He comes to those who want, who desire, who long. And I come for those who want sympathy, who want happiness, who are longing to be released, who are longing to find happiness in all things. That's the sentence where he changed from one to the other. Many noted the shift, and Besant and Ledbetter confirmed that the coming has begun. Krishna was also more confrontational about Arundel's claims now that he's finally gathered with his people again. He wrote to Ledbetter that the apostle business would only cause trouble, and that it was all purely in Arundel's imagination. Ooh.
Yeah. Get him!
In July, around a campfire back at Oman, the world teacher spoke through him again, saying, "Follow me and I will show you the way into the kingdom of happiness." Wedgwood, remember one of those apostles, whispered to Besant during the address the name of a black magician who he believed was speaking through Krishnamurti. Besant told her child Messiah that she believed he had been possessed by dark forces. So Krishnamurti told her if she really believed that he had been possessed, he would never speak in public again. And Besant sat with that and chose her adopted son. She followed him to America and even considered abandoning the Theosophical Society for him. Although she was dissuaded from this by Ledbetter. Back in California, Krishna was interviewed by 40 reporters at the Waldorf Astoria and offered the role of the Buddha at a rate of $5,000 a week by a film company.
What?
Yes. But he was uninterested in these pursuits.
Well, he already had 500 pounds for
right,
life, right?
500 a week. Yeah, he didn't need that. Or 500, a month. So instead, he was working to establish a school in India and charting a new course in his thinking. At a Paris meeting of the esoteric section of the society, he called the masters only incidents.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
At Urd, he told...
I can just feel Ledbetter's rage through this,
well, Arundel, for sure. I think Ledbetter's probably just, confused. I think he's perplexed by all this.
In a Catholic robe doing...
Right, yeah. Because he picked him, right? So he owns him to a certain extent. And, I don't mean owns him in the way of, he's in charge. I mean, it's his fault.
Responsibility.
Yeah, whatever Krishnamurti ends up saying, Ledbetter sort of has to roll with it. He told his listeners not to regard him as an authority. He said, "If I became a necessity to you, what will you do when I go away?" The masters, like any other spiritual authority, he said, were similarly unnecessary. Each person must find their own path to spiritual truth. Sri Krishna, Kudhumi, the Lord Maitreya, and the Buddha were all one person, the mystic union with the higher reality of the beloved with a capital B. This becomes a major concept for him. The beloved as this unifying divine force. the beloved was all of these forms, but also beyond these forms. His listeners would only understand the beloved when they could see the beloved in every animal, blade of grass, and suffering person. He said that he had entered into the flame, and more am I certain that I am the teacher, and my mind and consciousness are changed. Krishnamurti had been breeding a deep division within the society with all this talk of his. His followers in the Order of the Star in the East were mostly younger, and the older Theosophists in the esoteric section were very unhappy with his pronouncements.
Get out of here, boomers.
yeah, really. I mean, it's sort of like that. Yeah, it's that whole generational divide. Whereas the masters were not especially important to the newer members, they held a central place in the faith of Ledbetter's and Besant's generation. But Besant and Ledbetter themselves were more or less content to accept Krishnamurti's teaching.
Oh.
Ledbetter acknowledged that while Krishnamurti wasn't the teacher he was expecting, he was certainly a teacher of some kind.
Oh, okay, sure.
He's kind of a progressive dude. He's a weird guy, and he has his problems for sure, but in a way, he remains very open-minded his whole life, Ledbetter, right? Like, because he starts out as an Anglican priest, and then he becomes a Buddhist, and then a Theosophist. Well, a Theosophist, then a Buddhist, then a liberal Catholic, and now with Krishnamurti, he's like, well, yeah, I mean, it would be out of character for me to say no to this.
That's fair.
He's sort of just going. Besant, for her part, dissolved the esoteric section, arguing that with the arrival of the world teacher in the person of Krishnamurti, contact with the masters had been fully realized. In other words, with the Lord Maitreya possessing Krishnamurti and now speaking directly with the Theosophical Society, there was no reason to have a special little group of people who took astral journeys to the lodge.
Yeah.
The lodge had come to them.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking to... Oh, yeah, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, they probably didn't really like that because they probably felt very special getting to take those astral journeys.
Yeah, it's a huge change. It's sort of like the Vatican saying, we don't have cardinals anymore. You know?
Yeah.
We're done with those. So.
That's so weird. It's so interesting.
Yeah. But it's Besant herself who's leading the charge.
Well, she
very
also stopped doing those astral journeys a long time ago, right?
Yeah, she lost interest to a large extent. So I guess it's in character. Speaking to crowds of thousands in India and a crowd of 16,000 in Hollywood, Krishna's star continued to rise, but he was about to push back on his own success and break still further with his roots. At the 1929 Oman camp, Krishnamurti took his teaching to a point of a final break with Theosophy when he told his audience, "Truth is a pathless land, and you cannot approach it by any path whatsoever, by any religion, by any sect." He said, "Truth cannot be brought down. Rather, the individual must make the effort to ascend to it." It's very personal. You can't receive a teaching, and that teaching gets you to truth. You have to make the journey yourself. In one grand swipe of his arm, he dismissed more than 60 years of Theosophy's obsession with its masters, the gradual unfoldment of their teaching, and the astral initiation ceremonies which had of late transformed into terrestrial liberal Catholic masses and co-Masonic rites. The key, he said, is your own self. You must look within yourselves for enlightenment. In the grand climax of this address at Oman, he brought his anti-organizational approach to spirituality to the realm of the practical when he said, "I have now decided to disband the order, as I happen to be its head.
Whoa.
You can form other organizations and expect someone else."
Whoa.
That's wild.
He just shut the whole thing down?
It's over. There is no more Order of the Star devoted to the teachings of Krishnamurti.
Okay. I thought you meant like it was like the whole...
Well,
like,
Theosophy, he doesn't have that authority.
Okay.
But his, many tens of thousands of members in the Order of the Star in the East, which Besant had conceived as replacing the esoteric section, Blavatsky's home section, is gone.
Oh my God.
Wiped out. Stop following me. You can expect someone else.
Whoa.
Krishna claimed to have lost or released his memory of the past. Rajagopal, who Ledbetter had initially, if you remember, elevated as a kind of rival to Krishnamurti, had now become Krishna's close friend and advisor. Krishna had never owned property directly, and he resigned from the trusts that had been made in his name. He also resigned from the Theosophical Society in 1930, and Arundel sought to cut him off from the society's property, but Raja had thought ahead. By the time the Order of the Star was dissolved, Raja had transferred its assets to the Star Publishing Trust, which Raja himself managed. He would spend the next decades running the business end of Krishnamurti's enterprise, including his publishing rights and revenues, because Krishnamurti's writing books. He's going to write books, which is where I get all of this from. Not really. I mean, mostly these episodes are from biographies of Krishnamurti, but some of it is his own personal writing, and he's been writing since he was a teenager. In 1932, he spoke at Adyar and was cornered by members demanding to know if the masters were real or not. He refused to answer. In his final meeting with Besant, her memory had faded, but she still remembered him. She said, "His face was beautiful, but he looked frail and should take better care of himself." She died in September 1933, and Ledbetter followed her to the next life less than 6 months later. Arundel succeeded her as the Society's president and banned Krishnamurti from Adyar.
That's crazy. That dude seems so petty.
How dare you say I'm not an apostle?
Right.
Pretty petty, yeah.
How old were Ledbetter and Besant?
Oh, let me think. I had 33, so I think Annie was in her 80s.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
she lived
I
a
thought
good
she was a
long
lot
time.
younger at that time.
No, because she was born in the mid-19th century, so
Okay.
yeah. Well, Krishna didn't care, by the way, that he had been banned from Adyar.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't.
He'd retreated to the little 6-acre farm and cottage that Besant had purchased for him in Ojai, which would become the base of his operation for the next 30 years. So that's 30 years in America. During the Second World War, he was forbidden to give talks, and he fell into isolation, forgotten by the press.
Who forbade him also?
Yeah. America?
I think America. I'm pretty sure it was America. But because he was... I mean, India was not on the side of the Allies. Right, as a British colonized space. I don't really know.
Were they still a colony after World War One? I thought World War One they stopped being a colony.
It took into after World War II. I'm pretty sure
to get fully out of there.
I'm pretty sure.
Weird.
Pretty weird.
Boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
What happened to like freedom of speech?
Yeah. Well.
I mean, we interned Japanese during World War II.
I know.
Yeah,
that's what
Japanese
I mean.
Americans.
Rules
I should
for
say,
thee, not for me, or whatever
Yep.
type thing.
Yeah. Let's see. And after giving up the society role of world teacher, he was sort of kind of semi-retired during the Second World War. He listened to Beethoven. He chanted Sanskrit hymns. He disassembled and assembled car engines.
Whoa, that's a tall
Impressive.
order.
And drove very
This guy
fast.
would have loved Lego sets.
Yeah, he would have. That's for sure. So he's driving around Ojai, just hanging out. Raja married one of Krishna's followers who had been present at his revelation under the peppercorn tree.
Oh, that lady.
Rosalind, yeah.
Nice.
Yep, he married Rosalind. And at Ojai, he had ample opportunity for meditation and reflection and writing. And possibly an affair.
Oh.
So he became a second father to Radha, who was the daughter of Rosalind and Raja. But all of them fell out long after the Ojai years, and Radha published a memoir 5 years after Krishnamurti's death in which she made damning accusations about his life in Ojai and his personality. Bear in mind, so let me just break that down for a second so you understand before I say these things. The daughter of Raja and Rosalind was partially raised by Krishnamurti as a young girl because the three of them sort of lived together with the daughter. Or I guess the family lived with Krishnamurti. So like a weird sitcom. us and the guru. So, oh, Krishnamurti. So,
I kind of love that idea, though.
like, can you picture the opening, like the opening credits, and he like swings through the door and he's just smiling, beaming at the camera?
Can we write that as like our spring play to do in the summer?
That'd be so good.
That's right.
We're gonna need more Indians in our cast, but yeah. Anyway, so then, because Raja controlled all of Krishnamurti's assets, and Krishnamurti went through a thing where he sort of like broke up his businesses and stuff. This is later in his life. We'll get there. But because of this, there was bad blood between Krishnamurti and Raja at the end of his life. And Radha, as the daughter of Raja, would have internalized, I think, some of this conflict.
What were they arguing over? Assets?
Because Krishnamurti never wanted to own anything.
Yeah.
So Raja was his accountant, and sometimes that can get weird.
Yeah.
And that's
especially when you tell the
happened.
accountant to get rid of all the money.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Or basically, dissolve this, dissolve that, move this, move that. So
it feels impossible to not own anything. Like that's such a weird. Like nobody can live like that.
In the modern world, it's a really challenging idea.
Yeah.
Noble, but challenging.
I mean, he really didn't own anything on a technicality, really.
Yeah.
He still had control over it.
And he was comfortable. He had material circumstances that kept him comfortable. So let's leave aside Radha's attacks on Krishnamurti's character, which are impossible to parse given the family's history. She just said like weird things about him being mean and stuff. Like, don't bear out with any other description I have of his character. But she said that Krishnamurti and Rosalind became lovers in 1932, and with Raja frequently away on business, the business of the publishing trust, Krishna proposed marrying Rosalind in 1933. But Raja didn't seriously entertain the possibility. So in other words, Rosalind and Raja became sort of estranged. He was away on business a lot, and Krishnamurti stepped into that void. Radha puts the blame for their complex arrangement on Krishnamurti, but it's more likely, in my opinion, that they had a complex relationship with neither heroes nor villains. It's just three people dealing with a complicated situation.
I mean, they all lived together and they all raised each other's kids. And
right. Well, the one kid.
The one child.
And they knew each other for forever.
Yeah.
And they were rivals when they were younger.
Yeah. Peter Washington, who I've called in my Bassan episodes, I called him kind of gossipy. So I'm just noting that because he reported that there was no way to confirm or deny Radha's claims with the documentation available. So even Peter Washington, who likes to be gossipy,
was also like,
drew a line here.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Krishnamurti had many brushes with celebrity in Ojai. On the way back to California, stopping over in Europe, he met with Besant's old crony George Bernard Shaw, who commented to a friend that Krishnamurti was the most beautiful human being he'd ever seen.
Like look-wise or like just soul-wise? Not to get too specific, but
yes,
yeah,
inside
both.
and out.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
just a beautiful man, said George Bernard Shaw. He's an awesome guy. If you get a chance to look into George Bernard Shaw, or like if you have the patience to read his plays, he's a pretty awesome dude. Outside of Ojai, he went on a picnic with silent film stars Greta Garbo and Charlie Chaplin, as well as Chaplin's wife, Paulette Goddard.
Interesting.
Yeah. He was also on a picnic with the philosopher Bertrand Russell and the writer Christopher Isherwood. But perhaps his most significant celebrity contact during his Ojai years was Aldous Huxley. Huxley, perhaps best known for his novel Brave New World, but also his psychotropic explorations chronicled in The Doors of Perception, had moved to California. He was losing his vision and took long walks with Krishnamurti in the California countryside. Huxley had become very interested in Indian religion and the existence of a perennial philosophy, a familiar idea, if unfamiliar term, that all religions and philosophies share important commonalities. And we're actually going to do an episode or two on Huxley when I get done with Krishnamurti, sort of wrapping up this season. Huxley and Krishnamurti, along with Guido Ferrando and Rosalind, founded the Happy Valley School, later the Besant Hill School, based on a concept by Annie Besant of a school that nurtured spiritual, artistic, intellectual, and physical growth.
I think that's nice. However, the Happy Valley School sounds like something that you'd hear in a HBO documentary now about some weird cult where people are drinking mercury and
right, or like the beginning of a horror movie.
That too.
You just see it above the... He returned to India in August 1947, 2 months after the country became an independent nation, ending decades of British colonial rule. So that was 1947, John. I got your answer.
Gotcha.
He arrived alone for the first time in his life and was surrounded by a group of young students, some of whom would stay with him for the next 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that like us? Is that
So a
you
bit
and
like
I?
you know, yeah, so far, yeah. And John.
And John,
Yeah.
sorry.
Among them were Pupil Jayakar, another of Krishna's biographers who chronicled his time in India. Also Maurice Friedman, a Polish engineer who went on to become a scholar of comparative religion. Jamnada Dwarkadas, a politician and businessman who had been friends with Besant. And Shanta Rao, a traditional Indian dancer specializing in the South Indian ritual Bharat Natyam. Reflecting back, Krishnamurti said that the full awakening came during this year in India. So he's still not fully awakened. But finally, in 47.
Lord.
Yeah.
How old is he at this point?
47? He's... Oh, man. You guys keep quizzing me about these
I'm
numbers.
sorry. It just is
Wasn't he born in 1895 or something like that?
I don't remember.
I'll take your word for it.
It feels...
So he's 52.
He's in his... I think so, yeah.
It just feels important to know like how old he is at certain times, because I'm just picturing this teenage dude in my head still, which is not accurate, and I know
I was
it's
doing
not
that
accurate.
for like the first half, like the first two episodes.
No,
It was like 20.
breeze through the teenage
yes,
years.
I understand.
Yeah, he was born in 1895. So
like 50.
He's about
I'm still
50 now.
picturing him as like a teenager though.
He's finally reached his full enlightenment. Right? Yeah, so it's just a matter of like having a habit. You get into the habit rather than making the effort. It's just how you are. It's a shift in consciousness. At its core, he was talking about a change in way of being, abandoning paths, projects, and outcomes. This would create fertile ground where love could spring up spontaneously. He said, "You do not seek a way out because you do not know a way out." Right?
A way
Think
out
about
of what?
that. A way out of your trouble, a way out of your pain, a way out of your problem. You can't look for a way out because you don't know how to get out.
Yeah.
You know? We don't have that. That's why we're stuck. If we knew a way out, we wouldn't be stuck.
Yeah.
So is it like just take it one day at a time?
He says this: the moment you really see this, you are out. So the moment you realize that you can't find your way out on your own, you're out. You've escaped. The moment you recognize that looking for a path out is the wrong approach, you're out.
Because it's freeing.
You're free. You're free from the illusion that in space and time you can accomplish things.
Yeah. Gets rid of a lot of stress.
Yep. In a state of not knowing, he says, you are receptive, ready to receive the unknown. For Krishna, the truth rested in the unknown, since the known of human progress had been an abject failure. Truth was the product of action without consequence, living for the action and not for its result. I think it's important to acknowledge the degree to which, for Krishnamurti, all human endeavor had come to sort of a mess. So we need to not look around and say, well, what did this guy think and what did that guy think? The truth is in us. It's not outside of us. Because outside is where everything is a horror show.
Yeah.
Right?
Sounds about right.
Is it in us kind of like how you're talking about the beloved?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a
yes.
omnipresent
we are the
sort
beloved.
of.
Yeah.
Okay.
The beloved is us and we are the beloved. It is outside of us. It is inside of us.
We just need to tap into that.
Mm-hmm.
Without trying to.
Exactly right. But don't try. Yeah. Don't work at it. Just do it. But this was not the end of his strange mystical events, by the way. Jayakar reports that one night his students came into his room when they heard him calling. He didn't recognize them at first and asked for Rosalind in a childlike voice, but he's in India now. But then he said, he knows about you. And he said, don't leave the body alone and don't be afraid. Then Krishnamurti started calling for Krishnamurti.
Whoa.
Yeah, weird.
What?
Trippy.
Yeah. While he denied the need for masters or other intermediaries, a certain intermediary or mystically channeled higher self continued to work through him, is what I'm pointing at here. At Uttakamund, in May and June, he experienced terrible pain and had 2 of his students stay close to his body, as Besant had instructed his handlers in his youth. He told them, "They are cleansing the brain, oh, so completely emptying it." He said, "I am like an India rubber toy which a child plays with. It is the child that gives it life." Think about that. He is the toy, and the child is who? Right?
Yeah.
The beloved?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think that's what he would say. Something was working with Krishna, something beyond Krishna's direct control. In one instance, his face was transfigured by an episode, and he said, "The Buddha was here. You are blessed." So there are these weird supernatural events that happen through and around him. From August of 1950 until December 1951, Krishnamurti returned to Ojai for a period of silence and rest. He had been speaking for 3 years, he wrote to Jayakar, and needed time away. He was accompanied by Raja back to Europe, but there was increasing tension between the teacher and his manager, as we were talking about. Back in India, he lived alone with a cook to take care of his needs. Jayakar also noted the extreme care he took of his clothes. He always had a passionate feeling for color and texture. Hand-woven textiles enchanted him. I note his cook and his clothes for a couple of reasons. I don't want to get the wrong impression of the teacher. We don't want to think about him as an ordinary person in any regard. While he apparently delighted in performing quotidian tasks, he never really had to do them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He lived on a salary, which had been bestowed on him for life. John keeps reminding us, and rightly so. And he was no ascetic. Although he may have experimented with self-deprivation, his philosophy, much like the Buddha's, had little in common with sannyasa, the Indian tradition of wandering penniless holy men. He didn't strap on a diaper and, just start walking down the road covered in ash.
Yeah, he lived in a nice house and people cooked for him.
With nice clothes.
Yeah.
He
and had a nice-ass car, too, in California, right?
It's more Hindu in a certain way, like the appreciation of material pleasure. Like that's part of a spiritual journey for a Hindu to some extent. You have to really appreciate your life.
Yeah.
And he does. I think he has a kind of like a deep connection and appreciation for, and it's not a small thing that he just likes washing the dishes and stuff. Like I think about him sometimes when I have to do this stuff. I'm like, oh man, I just had to learn how to, and I'm actually not bad at it. I don't mind quotidian tasks, but the point being that we need to be present all the time. Anyway.
I need to get better at that. I hate doing the dishes.
Yeah. There's something to it, like taking a long drive. Like on a long drive, I can really just like power through the boredom and learn to just like be present and enjoy it. The presence with that's, but I can't do it in everything, John. There's certain things I just hate. The presence with what is included, being present to the sensual pleasure of life is what I'm trying to say here. The followers of Gandhi sought to deny the senses and desire, but Krishna said that the encounter with reality demands one's whole being, including the senses. So this is not it's just a different, it's a very occult confession. It's like we like this kind of, we tend to argue, I tend to argue in favor of this kind of approach, where we don't say the material world is awful and we need to cut off from it.
Because you can't. It's not possible.
Right. But so much of spirituality can be in Christian and Hindu contexts about divorcing yourself. Theosophical, right. They don't have sex.
Maybe that's why he left.
It depends on what you think of what Rosalind's daughter had to say. Krishnamurti spoke clearly about his opposition to social change and politics. In counterpoint to Besant, he believed that a transformation in consciousness was the first step to improving the world, since every human theory, idea, philosophy, and system of belief had only led to death, destruction, and ruin.
Could you say that one more time? I'm sorry. I zoned out at the very beginning of it.
So, what we need to do is transform consciousness. Politics is a waste of time to a large extent because it's external. If we can transform consciousness, that's the politics will take care of themselves. If we can learn to be present and appreciative and loving of, all people and all beings and all things, politics almost has no purpose anymore.
Yeah.
Politics ages the mind, he said. It is destructive to the flowers of the mind. and yet India's highest-ranking politicians made a habit of calling on him.
Maybe because they felt the same way.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, you look at the heads of the presidents and how they all just like go white immediately.
Yeah.
Their hair, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In Uttakamund, Jawaharlal Nehru, India's anti-colonialist first prime minister, asked to see Krishna, and Krishna went to see him at Government House with Friedman and Jayakar. The men were shy and slow to speak, but eventually Nehru asked Krishnamurti about the violence and strife in India. Extremist Hindu nationalism, which led to the death of Mahatma Gandhi, and Muslim calls for the establishment of a second state in Pakistan were core issues of the day and resulted in a lot of communal fighting. Krishnamurti said to Nehru that it needed a great awakeness and awareness to keep evil from entering and gaining strength. Also that the chaos of the world is a projection of individual chaos. So that second point, I think, is closest to this his general feeling about politics, but there's also this idea of evil sneaking in around the margins. Evil, I think, being a lack of care and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
He also met with leaders who blended the spiritual and the political, including the 20-year-old Dalai Lama in 1956. Dalai Lama comes up frequently on occult confessions. He just meets everybody. His Holiness asked Krishnamurti, "Sir, what do you believe in?" And left saying that their encounter had been a great experience with a great soul, and determined to meet with Krishna again. I don't have the answer to this question because we have a whole episode about what he believes in, but that's what the Dalai Lama wanted to know. In the early 1970s, he met the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, famous for founding Transcendental Meditation. He met him on a plane to India. The Maharishi was on his way to Nepal to announce a world revolution in consciousness and asked if Krishna would join him. The teacher politely declined.
Yeah. I pictured him being like, fuck that.
In 1963, he healed a broken-down Shankar Rao Deo. Shankar Rao was an Indian politician who had studied under Gandhi. In 1962, with fighting on the border between India and China, he led a peace march to China. He was joined by Allen Ginsberg of Howl fame, the beat poet, and other beat poets also joined the march, but they were stopped at the border of Burma.
Krishnamurti led this march?
No, this is Shankar Rao Deo.
Oh, okay, sorry.
More political, a student of
Got
Gandhi's.
Got it.
So they were stopped at the border of Burma, now Ceylon, and had to turn back and disperse. He became deeply depressed and went mute, and his friends wrote to Krishnamurti, who had met with Shankar Rao many times before. Krishna entered the room and said, "What have you done to yourself, my friend?" He embraced the wild-eyed, depressed man, and Shankar Rao broke down and recovered right there and then.
Aw, he just needed a hug.
He really did. But a hug from the master.
Yeah.
A spiritual hug.
Yeah.
The teacher. The teacher warned him not to go near politics anymore. Krishna performed laying on of hands healing. Although he did not advertise this skill, his technique resembled what contemporary spiritualists do, as I've done my research with them. He placed his hands on the patient's head and shook off anything that seemed to have entered them. Afterward, he asked the patient to sit quietly for a while and washed his hands, leaving the energy of the experience with the healing itself. That's oddly very consonant with what contemporary spiritualist mediums will do, healing mediums. Vinoba Bhave, a leader in the anti-colonial movement to free India from the British, began a political project in 1951 to transfer donated land to the poor. He also visited with Krishnamurti. Vinoba traveled with a small retinue of followers who he encouraged to question the teacher, meaning Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti didn't split hairs with one of Gandhi's closest associates. He said to him, "People who touch politics can't have a fresh mind." And looking around at his entourage, he said, "Are these all your followers? Too bad." The story came round to Vinoba about Krishnamurti. The teacher had said of the political agitator, "Vinoba says he agrees with me, but goes on doing his work as before, so his saying that he agrees has no meaning." Hearing this, Vinoba said simply, "Krishnaji is right." I love these guys. Oddly, I've got even the Krishnamurti's they're not even really rivals, right? These people, these philosophers, these Indian philosophers, they're just Such cool characters. When war between India and Pakistan broke out in 1971, Krishna asked his students why they did not protest. Politics were a distraction, but war should not be tolerated under any circumstance. Let me say that again. Protest would be okay, in Krishnamurti's view, if you're protesting war, because politics were a distraction, but war should not be tolerated under any circumstances.
I can get down with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am a pacifist. Yeah. I mean, barring Hitler's circumstances, right? It's hard to fathom. We're doing Iphigenia in the spring about Agamemnon has to sacrifice his daughter so the Greeks can go to war with the Trojans.
Yeah.
And I'm working on the script a little bit. I'm adding some of my own things. And I was just working today on a little bit about war and what the purpose is and
what the real cost is.
Yeah. And is there ever really a cause that justifies such a cost of human life?
Usually oil.
So often. I mean, there's economic factors, right? Even the Civil War was in part about economics. After returning from California in 1960, he was very concerned with technology and its impact on human welfare. I think this is interesting for us. This is 1960, right? He said, "Space is being conquered. Machines are taking over. Tyranny is spreading. The environment was being ravaged and the mysteries of nature unlocked, but it was all a game, children playing with toys. He told his audience that humanity should not be complacent. There was no time left. The house was burning."
Whoa. Ugh.
By 1967, he was becoming frustrated with the organization that had grown up around him. Not a single person was living the teaching, he said. Young audiences flocked to him in this era of American hippies and Indian gurus, but they weren't interested in the rigorous work he taught and the absence of psychedelic experience in his practice.
Oh, so he was like, no drugs and stuff like that?
What's the point? I mean, it's a distraction, right?
Yeah.
So the hippies are coming by and they're hoping to get like a Beatles experience out there. And he's like,
they're more theosophical.
Right. Yeah, really, honestly. So he just keeps getting this over and over again.
People want that crazy or spiritual experience.
Yeah, I mean, I love you guys out there in listener land. I love you, confessors. And I know some of you like to play around with the psychotropics, but it is widely regarded. Joseph Campbell, I think, said this best, that it's a kind of shortcut, and you're never quite ready if you haven't done the work to engage with the shortcut. You know, you got to get there the hard way. And for Krishnamurti, I don't know that there's any root to it. I mean, he claims to have never dreamed, so the subconscious for him, I think, was of less a concern. And yet I think so much subconscious activity influenced his life and work. He honored the hippies for rebelling against warmongering and hypocrisy and seeking communion with nature and among humanity, but he said they were a lost generation. As history bore out, their commitment to social transformation and a loving society was not sufficiently deep and could not be sustained and carried forward.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
look where we are.
Think about the culture of the 60s, how much of that has actually been maintained. I mean, the Reagan years, right, were a reaction, and we're in yet another reaction right now to some of the free loveism of the 60s and all this ideology. So I think that's what he meant by them being a lost generation, that they got lost.
Like it was like a fad more than a movement?
Like they were on the right path, but they didn't go far enough. They didn't go deep enough is really it. It was too external and not internal. That free loveism has to come from a deep inner place. It's not just about freeing sex. It's about freeing love universally. And opening your heart in that way. I mean, I'm interpolating Krishnamurti here, but he was similarly frustrated with Ojai and had an unsettled relationship with Raja Gopal, even though Raja held the legal rights to his work. He severed connection with the Ojai organization and set up a new foundation in Europe. So here you can see the conflict. Perhaps the most unexpected, but also strangely characteristic relationship of the teacher's career was with one of, if not the most powerful woman in India in the 20th century. I'm speaking, of course, of Indira Ghandi. Gandhi was India's third prime minister, serving from 1966 until 1977, and then again from 1980 until her assassination in 1984.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are long terms.
Long terms, and boy, is India ahead of us there. Right?
That's like years and years. Like ours are 4 for president.
Yes, yeah, you couldn't serve for such a long term in America, but they had a woman leader.
Oh, sorry.
In
yes.
66.
That's awesome.
That's ahead of Margaret Thatcher as well. Gandhi was a member of a powerful political family. Her father, Nehru, was India's first prime minister, and she was succeeded by her son after her death. Regarded for her toughness, she repelled a Chinese invasion from the Himalayas, went to war with Pakistan to secure the independence of Bangladesh, and oversaw India's first nuclear test. I'm noting all of these things because you can see she was the Iron Lady. She was tough.
Mm-hmm.
Domestically, when she took office, India's banking system was entirely private and locked out members of the lower classes from banking their money. She nationalized 14 commercial banks, resulting in stratospheric increases in deposits, loans, and the number of branches in the country. She did the same with oil, steel, coal, cotton, and insurance. So she socialized all of these things.
She's a busy lady. Busy lady.
Well, I mean, she had a lot of time, but yes, she got to work. She helped establish the principle of equal pay for equal work in the Indian Constitution and put an end to payments for Indian royals.
Oh.
Yeah. So much for the Duke of Calcutta.
Like the government would subsidize the royal
the
class.
Indian royals.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But not after her.
How are the royals different than the caste system? Is that...
Yeah, it's all the same. I think it's all caught up in the same idea.
Gotcha.
Arguably the greatest controversy, but I mean, I'm laying all this out because I think a lot of our listeners don't know much about Indira Ghandi or Indian history, and that's fine. There's a lot of countries in the world. I happen to be very interested in Indian history, so whenever I get the opportunity, I explore it. But I also want you to think about the contrast between Indira Ghandi and Krishnamurti. Some of this, like the banking and stuff, is Krishnamurti in concept, right? I mean, it's compassionate and, loving. Some of it, like the wars with China and Pakistan,
nuclear tests.
Yeah.
Very much not Krishnamurti. So the greatest controversy of her leadership is about to get even worse, was her imposition of emergency rule from 1975 to 1977 in order to put an end to Indian poverty. Her administration oversaw the building of millions of houses for unhoused laborers and the abolition of debt for the poor. So far, so good.
Mm-hmm.
This all sounds good. Part of the impetus for the state emergency was irregularities, however, in her 1971 election. 4 years after the election, she was accused and convicted of using government resources to secure her election. Some of these accusations were relatively petty, including using the state police to build a dais, like to stand on, and employing a government agent for her campaign before he formally resigned from the government. So that's more like a matter of like bad timing and paperwork. But she was banned from holding a congressional office, which meant that she could no longer be prime minister. She vowed to appeal the decision to India's Supreme Court, and her political party backed her. But a large opposition movement sprung up, led by Jayaprakash Narayan, and to quell calls for revolution, Gandhi appealed to India's president to declare a state of emergency, which he did. India has a prime minister and a president. The French have this as well.
Why proclaim a state of emergency?
So that she could end the political infighting that was going on over her supposed election.
Got it.
Irregularities. Thousands of protesters and striking rail workers were arrested and put in jail. So now it's starting to catch up all these other things. So India's sort of like descending into chaos, and rail workers are protesting, and it's a mess. So the president declares a state of emergency, and Gandhi goes to work imprisoning people for a variety of reasons. Her son, Sanjay Gandhi, led a mass sterilization campaign to limit population growth during this emergency period.
Whoa.
Yes.
Wild.
Yeah.
Interesting choice.
During the first year of the 21-month emergency, 8.3 million men underwent a vasectomy, more than 3 times the number who had done so the previous year, suggesting the campaign was largely forced. But we can't, of course, know for sure. The emergency could not go on forever, and Gandhi called for elections in March 1977. While her policies had been popular at first, the country worried over an imposed dictatorship, and Gandhi's party lost. Her opponents arranged for her arrest, but her supporters hijacked an Indian Airlines jet, demanding her release. Wild
That's
stuff.
crazy.
What in the hell? Yeah.
Her extended trial won back the public sympathy, and she returned to office in 1980, the same year as her son Sanjay, that her son Sanjay died in an airplane crash. So she sort of rose away. They over-prosecuted her, and she rode a wave of public sympathy back into office.
Weird. That's crazy.
I'm not unconvinced that in America this happened with Mr. Trump a little bit. I don't think that his return to office is a product of a wave of public sympathy.
No.
But the prosecutions ultimately, as it turns out, didn't help. And I think this is what happened more so with Indira Ghandi, is she was over-prosecuted to the degree that the public sympathized with her, thought back on the glory days of Indira Ghandi, and brought her back into office. When the Sikh-controlled state of Punjab sought greater independence from India, Gandhi responded with Operation Blue Star, in which the army removed the rebels from the Sikh Golden Temple complex that they'd occupied, and on the 31st of October 1984, she was shot 30 times and killed by 2 of her bodyguards. Both of them were Sikhs. Yeah. So she died on Halloween Day, 1984.
It's a very Roman
30
way to die.
days? I mean, 30 shots?
Yeah,
30 shots? Oh, my God.
Yeah, with prejudice.
Good Lord.
That's a very Roman way to be assassinated.
Oh, yeah, by your bodyguards?
Yeah, the Praetorian guards.
Yeah. Throughout nearly all of this turmoil, Gandhi would pay occasional visits to Jiddu Krishnamurti. Gandhi was close friends with Pupil Jayakar, Krishnamurti's biographer and student, and a leading cultural figure in India who founded arts festivals and promoted handicrafts and textile works across the country. She's sort of like the arts minister of India, Krishnamurti's biographer. And she was good friends with Gandhi. They had first met as teenagers. In fact, Jayakar's 2 major books were Krishnamurti's biography and her subsequent biography of Indira Ghandi.
Ah.
Yeah. And so Jayakar was the connecting point that brought Krishnamurti together with India's Iron Lady. Gandhi first met Krishna in the late 1950s before becoming prime minister. They met again at one of Jayakar's dinner parties in 1970. Krishna was away for a year when the emergency began in 1976. Jayakar asked Gandhi if Krishna would be allowed to speak in India, and Indira told her he could come and speak freely. So even during the emergency, he got special permission. He arrived in October 1976, and Indira Ghandi met him at Jayakar's house, speaking with him for 90 minutes during the emergency. Afterward, Krishna said of Gandhi that she was perhaps the only person in her position who was prepared to listen, and Gandhi said that was the day she began to see a way out of the emergency. She would order the release of the government's political prisoners shortly thereafter and call for elections.
Oh.
So arguably, Krishnamurti played some sort of role in her deciding to end this. Krishna was in Ojai when she lost the election of 1977 and returned to India the following November. Gandhi had just won an election, returning her to Congress, but the prime minister's seat. Gandhi had just won an election, returning her to Congress, but not the prime minister's seat. Soon after her brief imprisonment, she came to see Krishna, and he asked her about leaving politics, but she couldn't see a way to do it. She slipped into a concert given in his honor and tried to slip out without being noticed by Krishna, but he followed her and bid her farewell. In December 1980, she came to visit him again at the campus of his school at the Rishi Valley. Knowing that he wouldn't want to see so many armed guards around, she ordered her security detail to conceal themselves around the school during her visit, which she characterized as personal rather than political.
Huh.
Her son had recently died in the airplane accident, and she wanted to see him, I think, for some solace. And after meeting with him, Krishna induced her to speak to the children of the school, and she reluctantly consented. In October 1981, Krishnamurti was in Delhi, and she invited him to tea, and they spent 2 hours speaking. They met again in the fall of over the next 2 years. In fact, she met with Krishnamurti and the Dalai Lama the last month she was alive. After she was killed, Krishna said, "Don't hold memories of Indira in your mind. That holds her to the earth. Let her go." It's difficult to say how Krishnamurti influenced Gandhi's decisions or what they said to each other. Clearly, he engaged with her as a person like any other and attended to her and not her office when they met to discuss those things that troubled her. They discussed the emergency, but also the death of her son. While India's Iron Lady, with her conflicts and wars and campaigns of control, was sometimes the antithesis of what Krishna taught, she was also an exemplar of a politician on a mission to change the world and elevate the poor, at least in theory. So Krishnamurti gave her an ear. In the last decade of his life, Krishnamurti began to wonder if it was possible to replicate his path to enlightenment. Right?
No. The answer is no.
Is he wanting to be the Ledbetter in this situation?
I suppose, yeah. But he doesn't get up to that business because Ledbetter was too guru-y, right? That's the behavior of a guru, to name messiahs.
Yeah. I mean, and that's not what he meant, right? He meant, like, can anybody else become enlightened without all of this bullshit that I went through?
Yeah.
Right? That's what he's asking?
He asked whether he was a biological freak or whether it was necessary to make a child feel that they have a special role the way he did in order to achieve his level of understanding.
Ugh.
The Buddha, he noted, only had 2 students who achieved enlightenment after him. So he's worried, right?
Yeah.
Ugh. Maybe doubt was the key.
And he feels as though in this moment that he is fully enlightened?
He feels he understands. Yeah, he's awakened. Maybe doubt was the key, he said. Dr. Besant left Christianity. She left her husband. There was doubt. And then she got trapped in organizations and lost vitality. Doubt without its immense vitality purges the mind of illusions. So doubt he considers to be a very healthy spiritual thing. We think about it the opposite in the West. Like, we think doubt is the problem. Mm-hmm. Christianity is, very down on doubt. But Krishnamurti says it's Annie Besant's doubt that got her as far as she got spiritually. And only when she lost her doubt did she lose the ability to continue to evolve. On the 4th of November 1980, with Arundel long dead, Krishnamurti found himself walking the grounds of Adyar again, where he'd first moved with his father as a young boy. He had been invited there by the Society's newest president, Radha Bernier. In the room that had once belonged to his mama, Besant, Annie Besant, his adopted mother, he walked quietly around, considering her little wooden chowkee stool and desk. He paused before a photograph of Ledbetter and said, "This was not there in my time." "No," said Bernier, the president. "It had been placed there years later." Looking up at Ledbetter, Krishnamurti raised his hand and said in Latin, "Pax, pax," which means peace, peace. Such a powerful, strange moment. He's in the bedroom of, his adopted mother, who had elevated him to the status of Messiah, looking at this picture of Ledbetter, who had also elevated him, and all he does is sort of bless him, saying, "Peace, peace." I can't parse exactly what it means, but it seems to a certain, like, is he asking for peace himself? Is he offering peace to who he thinks was a troubled individual in Ledbetter? I don't know. Then he turned to his host and left the room. His choice to speak in Latin suggests Ledbetter's Christian ceremonial inclinations. He was, in other words, speaking to Ledbetter and not to himself. But was he wishing Ledbetter's spirit peace? Was he asking the spirit to give him peace? Was he wishing for a peace to settle the strange turmoil of his relationship, not only with Ledbetter, but what Ledbetter had wrought? His long career as a mystic, but not the mystic his progenitor had envisioned. Who knows?
That is wild.
So much complexity there.
I want to be in the presence of this man.
I know.
I feel like it would.
Want to.
I know.
Well, I'm going to tell you why you can't be. He died in Ojai.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that, but
he died in Ojai in a room facing the pepper tree where he'd had his earliest enlightenment. Only 5 months before, he had been in India meeting with the new Prime Minister, Indira Ghandi's son, Rajiv, and speaking to 300 students at a camp in Varanasi. He died on the 17th of February, 1986. He'd lived more than 90 years. Almost exact, like 91, right? He'd been sick for 5 weeks with pancreatic cancer. After his death, he was cremated in California and his ashes scattered at Ojai and in England and India. While he requested that the schools and organizations constituted in his name continue, he did not designate a successor and asked that there be no monuments or memorials to him. I'm going to quote him. "There is no place for hierarchy or authority in the teaching. There is no successor and no representative who will carry on these teachings in my name now or at any time in the future. The teaching should continue, but the man had no care for what would become of his memory or his name.
Because, you can't control that, you know?
And ego is a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is what matters. And the truth is this deep spiritual thing in all of us. That's Krishnamurti's life.
It's a wild ride.
I'm not done with you guys because we're going to come back for one more episode and do the teachings of Krishnamurti.
You going to be able to do all that in one episode?
We're going to try, friends. We're going to try. But he's so inspirational to me. In thinking and writing about these topics over the years and publishing on these topics, it's always been my opinion, particularly since I dwell on like the paranormal and the supernatural, that people who are inclined to publicity are inclined to fake. And that the people we can trust most are people who are not especially interested in their own fame. He's such a perfect incarnation of someone who doesn't care what you think of him at all. It's sort of remarkable. He's not in that influencer space. He's not in that podcaster space, right? I mean, at our best, right, on this podcast, we don't care very much about anything other than the truth as we understand it. That's what I aspire to do here. I aspire to a Krishnamurti level of ethos, of morality. But, you know, we all get up to, what is it, clickbaiting and that kind of stuff to some extent. Not, I guess maybe not occult confessions, but...
But we are like, oh, like how many stars do we have and stuff like that? Like how many people
historically,
listen?
Yeah, I've begun to overcome those kinds of issues. But yeah, I mean, historically, the ego is hard to overcome. But he's inspirational in the way he directed us, and this path of negation. I just love this idea that we need to strip away. I mean, in Christianity, there's this and we're raised in the Western world to think that belief is the key. We just need to believe in this or that. But Krishnamurti is saying you need to stop believing.
You need to doubt.
Yes. And we'll talk about next episode, but when you do that, that's when you find God. When you find the truth, there is God. There is your soul.
Because if you're just believing, then you're believing what someone else told you.
It's
an outside thing. It's not an inside thing.
And it's a corrupted thing, right? Because it comes from the outside and because we know the outside is a shit show. That's nice too. The acknowledgement that it's a shit show.
That is
nice.
true.
That there's room for God in this shit show. It's just, God's just not where we think. God's not in a place, in a building. That guy over there doesn't have God. That guy's not going to show us God. We have to find God on our own, inside of ourselves, by stripping away all the bullshit, because it's all bullshit. Oh man. It's nice. It's freeing.
It is, actually. I feel like this is kind of how I've been living my life, because I consider myself agnostic, where I'm like, there's definitely something going on out there, but I'm not going to worry about it. That's kind of how I've been kind of doing it.
Well,
so.
Krishnamurti would want you to worry about it, but as an internal truth.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess to be fair, I haven't been not worrying about it. But
here we are.
Yeah, because I am here, yes.
Right.
I have been kind of looking, but also not been like,
searching.
I don't know. Yeah, but not been searching. I ended up here somehow.
You searched, nevertheless. Yeah.
You searched without searching.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anyhow. I hereby adjourn and declare closed this meeting of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors until such a time as we get together and do it again. I'm going to demote our actors so that we can get things back to normal here. I am the Supreme Hierophant, Dr. Rob C. Thompson. I am joined by our sister of the 84th degree. I mean, maybe the 85th. She did go on a few astral journeys lately. That's Savannah Barrett.
Goodbye.
And Johnny Cook, our patron progenitor.
Hi and bye.
Maybe we call you the proto-progenitor. I don't know. I don't know how we can leverage you to the
Fancy.
next level. We'll find out how these guys get to the next level through Krishnamurti's teaching on our next episode here on Occult Confessions.